I'm going to hand it over to our next speaker, who really needs no introduction. He is the progressive lion of the Massachusetts State House, representing parts of Cambridge and Somerville, State Representative Mike Connolly.
Hey, good afternoon. Well, thank you for that introduction. My name is Mike Connolly. I do have the honor of representing Cambridge and Somerville, and it's such an honor to follow Vaughn, to follow Mike, to follow Steve Tolman, and to be here in solidarity with all of you. I don't always make notes when I speak, but this is such a big agenda today that I actually took down a few notes. And what I wanted to say, and I think it fits with the theme of what we've already heard, is that in many ways, this is the best of times and the worst of times for progressives. And what do I mean by that? Well, on the one hand, the Covid-19 pandemic has revealed how broken the Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, neoliberal, austerity, war, imperialist posture has left us, how vulnerable it has left us, where the United States has been unable to adequately respond to this pandemic. And despite all of our best efforts, nevertheless, it's the most vulnerable people of color, working class people, immigrants, who have borne the brunt of this awful pandemic. But on the other hand, and it echoes what we've already heard, out of that darkness, we now see real cracks of hope. And those openings of hope come starting with how our government had to respond. Because implicitly, the response to this pandemic shows us that the system is broken. It shows us that the imperialist state needs to go. It shows us that we need to tax the rich, that we need to move away from neoliberalism. So what did we do? The very first thing we did was we took money and we just put it in people's pockets. That can't end now. We must continue in the face of hundreds of years of oppression, inequality, white supremacy, systemic racism, war, and imperialism. We must continue handing money to those who are most vulnerable. That's a program that works.
That's right.
Not something with 50 pages of forms where you wait months for an answer and still get rejected. That doesn't work. People will continue to die. What did we do after that? Then we said, well, when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, because that's something we all agree is important, we will make that free at the point of service. We're not going to ask any questions. You show up and you get your vaccine. And that's terrific. But what about someone with diabetes? What about someone with cancer? What about someone with cardiovascular disease or mental illness? Shouldn't their health care be free at the point of service? And that's why we need Medicare for all. When it comes to student loans, what did we do? We said, well, federal student loans, we're going to have a pause on payments. There will be zero interest at least until September 30th. That's terrific. But as Vaughn said, this is a crisis. It's incomprehensible. Well over $1 trillion in student loan debt. Much of it will never be paid back. We can't have a system of indentured servitude. We need to cancel that debt, and we'll pay for it by ending the wars, cutting the military, and taxing the rich. Then you come to housing. Again, how did we respond to the pandemic? I'm proud to say on Beacon Hill, we passed the nation's strongest eviction and foreclosure moratorium. In Washington, D.C., and in the federal level, the Centers for Disease Control said, evictions are a public health menace. We can't have evictions. And at present, we have a thin layer of CDC protection that will run through June 30th. And the real estate developers and the right wing are in courts all over this country trying to take away that very thin layer of protection. Well, I'm here to say, and I know you're here with me to say, we should maintain this eviction moratorium indefinitely. No one should be evicted for economic reasons. Housing should be a human right. We should have guaranteed housing for all. So where was I? You know, when Joe Biden, we heard this from Steve Tolman, when Joe Biden addressed Congress, the reality was that was a pretty incredible speech. I'm 40 years old. I never heard a Democratic president unabashedly stand up and say, you know what the answer is? Spending money. You know what the answer is? Building infrastructure. But we know it's going to be a difficult road. The Senate is 50-50. Some of our Democratic colleagues aren't even friends of the working class. And so we're going to have to continue organizing to actually take these cracks of hope that we've worked so long to get to this moment and actually make good on them and see this through so that we guarantee housing as a human right, so that we get Medicare for all, cancel student debt, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just briefly touch on a couple of other issues that relate to Beacon Hill and the local level. And the first one will be tax the rich. Here in Massachusetts, everyone needs to understand this. Everyone needs to understand this. Here in Massachusetts, we have a flat tax. It is a Republican's dream. Remember that guy, Steve Forbes? This is what Republicans have salivated for decades. They can't get it on the federal level. We already have it here in Massachusetts. The tax rate is 5%. That goes for Part A income, dividends and interest. That goes for Part B income, wages and salary. And that goes for Part C income, long-term capital gains investments. Now I ask you, brothers and sisters, to think about that for a second. What does that mean? That means that the person mopping the floor, the person serving the hamburger, is being taxed at the same rate as the billionaire trading on the stock market. That is wildly inequitable. There will never be racial justice. There will never be economic justice so long as we tax wage and salary labor at the same rate as unearned investment income labor. Now on Beacon Hill, back in November, I brought forward an amendment to address this. It had been crafted in partnership with the Mass Budget Policy Center. We had hundreds of organizations supporting it. And in the end, our amendment got 30 votes in the House of Representatives. We were crushed. This was a proposal to tax long-term capital gains. 80% of long-term capital gains goes to the wealthiest 1% of households in Massachusetts. 3% of capital gains goes to the lowest 80% of households, and we included exemptions to take them out of the equation to focus on the rich. How messed up is that? Well, right now, Joe Biden, that's his idea. He says, let's tax long-term capital gains. And yet here in deep blue Massachusetts, we're struggling to make it real. Couple more quick things. How am I doing on time? Okay. So there's another way to address this. It's called the Fair Share Amendment. It's an idea that so many, our brothers and sisters in education, the Raise Up Coalition, they started working on this 7 years ago. It's a constitutional amendment. It's the only way under our Constitution to address this flat tax that is strangling our state. We spent 4 years gathering signatures, doing campaigns, getting support, getting votes in the legislature to bring it to the ballot. We got the ball to the 2-yard line. And then in came the Associated Industries of Massachusetts, in came the Massachusetts High Technology Council, and they went up to the SJC, and they got that amendment that would only tax the super rich to fund education and transportation. With their lawyers, they got it thrown off the ballot. And we didn't have that opportunity. And what that means is that over this current 4 to 5 year period, we've been deprived of $10 billion so that we can make the Student Opportunity Act happen, so that we can move on to address our public colleges and universities, and so the MBTA wouldn't catch on fire. Now, the end of the story goes, what happened next? The very next opportunity, those same entities, the Mass High Technology Council, they said, you know what, we have a transportation emergency in Massachusetts. We need money. said? They said, we've come up with an idea. We will address it. We will have the working class pay. We'll raise user fees. We'll raise gas taxes. And we'll have the working class pay for this mess. Now, all of this is in the context of a 2017 Tax Cut Federal Jobs Act that cut the top corporate tax rate from about 36% to 21%. So these big corporations got the windfall of a lifetime, and yet they're still depriving us of revenue and saying the working class should pay. So if you haven't already figured it out, I could probably go on for another hour sharing with you the outrages that Rep. Eiderhoven and I deal with on Beacon Hill, but I'll leave you with this. We will continue to do what we can do on Beacon Hill and in Massachusetts, but if we're going to address this society across America holistically, we need to do what's on that board. We do need to tax the 1%. We need to cut the military budget. And we need to invest that money in all the programs that will allow people to live and thrive. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike Connolly.